My grandma's wordy, literally. Her full name is Wordy Mae Sweeney. Of course she doesn't go by Wordy, although she is very good at crosswords and she's the best Scrabble player around. Everyone calls her Mae and everyone loves her. She's absolutely lovable, very creative, and super stubborn. Perhaps her most notable personality trait is how lovable she is. She's very kind, honest, and she's absolutely hilarious. She said she got her kindness from the Depression, where in order to help everyone survive, everyone had to share their time and money in order to keep everyone afloat. So as a result, she started working when she was around the age of 14 and donated all of her money until the time that she left her home to help keep her family alive. She also donated her time and effort to help her mother raise her 7 children. She was very sweet to everyone and always knew just what to say to make a person smile, whether it was a funny story or a sweet remark. Although, despite her kindness, she was honest to the point where you could say it was blunt. She could say something like, "Your singing was a little bit sharp, but I still loved your voice," and so she could tell people what she really meant and still help them feel good. Of course, she didn't sugarcoat things and she always spoke her mind, which is part of what everyone liked about her. She's also hilarious. She always knows just what to say to make people laugh, and whether she's coming up with her own jokes or coming back with witty remarks, she's always leaving my dad speechless. Her humor was a little bit sarcastic, but a lot of the time she can be literal too. For example, when she worked as a waitress, a man just said that he wanted his steak on a plate. She really did bring him a raw steak on a plate. Most of the time people took her humor quite nicely, but there were a few times when she pushed it a little bit too far. In the end, she realized that for her humor and for her kindness and her honesty, people really did love her, and she let it go to her head a little bit. But she was still okay. She's also very creative. She wrote different stories, and she had different kinds of arts and crafts to express her creativity. Some of her stories were just stories that used words that started with G's and K's that you didn't really pronounce, and she would pronounce those silent letters. So, a story might come out, "The gnarly gnome gnawed the ganache." They were pretty silly, but I took it as a sign of her intelligence. She also used crafts using old jewelry that people donated to her, and she would make boxes like these and give them to her friends and family. She also used the jewelry to make portraits, which looked something like this, but this is one that she used leaves. Her leaf portraits, where she layered the leaves on top of others, usually to look like plants, became her most notable pieces of art and made her very popular in the communities that she lived in. As a result, people always knew about her, and they knew how stubborn she was. My grandma is always right. Whatever she says, whether it's to my dad or her doctor, she seems to be right in the end. Mostly because she's stubborn. So when it comes to health things, like her type 2 diabetes and her gout and her glaucoma, she's pretty stubborn. And when it came to cancer, she was stubborn enough to survive. 10 years ago or so, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and eventually, a few years later on, breast cancer as well. She decided she wanted to live in both those instances, and so she did live, and she made sure of it. In the end, however, her stubbornness got the best of her, so when she decided it was time for her to die, she passed away. So, just a few years ago, because of her stubbornness, she passed away. So I guess I should be talking about my grandma in terms of was rather than is. She was very kind, one of the kindest yet blunt people someone could know, and she was very funny and always knew how to make people laugh. She was the most creative person I've ever known and probably ever will know, and she was the most stubborn old lady that anyone could ever come across. It's for all of these quirky and strange yet average reasons that I loved my grandmother almost more than anyone else I know, and it's for all of these reasons that I will always cherish her.